Good evening. Call this Bristol, Virginia School Board meeting October 5th to order. If we would stand and recite the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thanks everyone. Mr. Alvis. First up is the approval of agenda. Do I have a motion?
Was there something to be added, or did everything get added?
Yes, and I don't have
Jennifer's get added and everything's added to it.
Right, we're just waiting for a motion for y'all to approve it.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Chairman, I move the approval of the agenda. With that addition.
Have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Ms. Jones?
Mr. Alvis?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Goodpaster?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mr. Fletcher?
Yes. Okay, next up is the school board student representative report. Ladies?
Hi, my name is Sarah Stacy, and I'm one of the school board representatives.
And I'm Kelly Locke, and I'm also one of the school board representatives.
And we will share with you today about our elementary school's COVID-19 protocol, some student perspectives, current events at elementary schools, and high school activities continuing, and our Spirit Week beginning.
In the past few weeks, we visited all of our elementary schools. We sat down with small groups to get the students' perspectives on COVID-19 and how it's affecting their lives. We asked about what they did over the extended summer, what new programs they are using this year, and what their favorite and least favorite thing about school is.
At all of the schools, the kids talked about how Schoology was a struggle to navigate. The biggest complaint we received was about masks. All schools are now having recess with more hand washing rules and social distancing implemented, which made the students happy. Many feel that their workload has increased. As they talked, it was evident that navigating technology was what evoked this feeling in them. Many students said that they felt it was harder to show their work on the computer than on pen and paper when doing math.
When asked if they're having enough social time with their friends, they felt it had not been fulfilled. They brought up wanting to do more group activities and discussions because they felt it would give them more social interaction. We also asked them if they were seeing their distance learning friends virtually, and they said no. They told us that virtual meetings with all of their classmates on Fridays would be something they would enjoy. All schools are engaging their students in online programs such as iReady, Epic, and Reflex, where they can play fun learning games or read books. The students seem to enjoy these interactive learning games. All students said that their teachers were being extra accommodating during these times, and they tell us that all the teachers were doing the best that they can. When asked about the school start and end times, the students enjoyed it more because they got out earlier and they felt like they were able to complete their homework, play, or do practice or an activity.
One student we spoke to told us that he felt that by using computers now will prepare him for a technology-focused future. Some students felt that using computers were easier in a sense because typing was easier on their hands than writing with pencil and paper. They also felt that their work was neater by typing on the computer. Staring at computer screens for an extended period of time has put a lot of strain on some of these students. Implementing technology breaks such as mask breaks was recommended. Frustration with computer issues, malfunctions were the most concerning things that the students were dealing with.
All of the kids said that art, physical education, library, and music were all still a fun part of their day. All schools except Van Pelt have restricted the use of their library, but the students are still able to check out books, and the librarians have begun quarantining the books after use. At Van Pelt, we also got to see how Miss Tallman holds her class and is still finding fun ways to make music a part of her students' school day.
While we were at Van Pelt, we were able to see those fun ways that she was able to have her class. It may not be traditional, but it's effective and safe. And in the gym, we were able to see how they're able to keep the kids apart and still proceed with those activities.
At all the schools, we were told that there are more virtual students coming back to in-person learning every day. Children no longer switch classes, and instead the teachers come to them to prevent excess hallway traffic and the spread of COVID. Students in pre-K through first grade are currently using iPads instead of computers, but the teachers are still finding creative ways to teach fundamental skills that are learned in the younger years. Adding to their impressive education, Washington Lee is beginning their extensive after-school program where kids can go and participate in various club-like activities. At Stonewall Jackson, the teachers are seeing more parent involvement in their kids' education. The school counselors are also implementing a fun new broadcast called SJ Support You News that encourages their students to get excited about supporting one another and letting them know how to cope in difficult situations. Stonewall Jackson is also beginning a voting project to teach the kids about democracy and show them that their opinions matter.
Van Pelt has established a partnership with Southwest Virginia Community Health System, which provides the opportunity for all BVPS students and staff to receive rapid testing for sicknesses like strep throat and the flu. The doctors and nurse practitioners are at Van Pelt 8 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. every week, Monday through Thursday. Van Pelt also received a new grant and spent the money on free books for all of the kids.
At Highland View, we were also shown some of the ways that teachers spent their own time over the summer preparing for their students' return. This included fun social distancing spots on the floor and bulletin boards encouraging wearing masks. All of the schools have come up with great motivation for the kids to adhere to all of the protocols, and principals reported compliance in every single school.
Teachers have also gotten really creative with how to separate the students and create innovative learning environments. The elementary schools now have clear dividers to keep them apart, but still keep kids engaged in their lessons.
Finally, while we talked with the students of each school, we also communicated with the principals of each school, and we shared the students' perspectives and suggestions with them. These students had some great ideas to share with us, and we're excited to share these ideas with their principals as well. Lastly, we would like to say thank you to all the principals and teachers at the elementary school for allowing us to come to their schools and interview them and their students.
At Virginia High School, our first Spirit Week of the year is starting up. There's a different theme for every day of the week, and on Wednesday we're planning to have 2 socially distant pep rallies to wrap it all up. This week, our FBLA chapter will be starting up our weekly drawings for $5 gift cards for Blackbird Bakery. Our FBLA chapter will also be participating in a statewide FBLA leadership conference called Learn to Lead, a virtual leadership experience, on October 17th. Administrators and board members are welcome to attend to see the great things that VHS FBLA is doing, so if you would like to join, please see Mrs. Leonard for more information. Another thing that happened in this past week, the Student Advisory Committee and the Equity Committee met this past week with Dr. Perigin to discuss issues that they felt needed to be addressed. We discussed problems mentioned in last month's survey, as well as health concerns that other students had witnessed in the halls, restrooms, and classes. And finally, most sports and activities are still going strong in preseason workouts.
Thank you, ladies. It's a new way of life and a lot of obstacles, and sounds like a lot of ingenuity has taken place in all the schools, but we're all back in the classroom. Not all, but we're back in the classroom. We're having athletic practice and other things, trying to get back to the normal, and just appreciate everybody's effort. Next up, the school presentation, Stonewall Jackson. Is that Dr. Brittle?
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to share information about Stonewall Jackson. School days at Stonewall Jackson this year, the same, but so very different. We power up each morning, beginning our day armed with infrared thermometers. We head out, meeting and greeting our families, and before they even exit their vehicles, recording each child's temperature. Students enter the building masked, following carefully the marked spaces on the floor, distancing themselves in the cafeteria as they move through the line, picking up their little bag with designated milk, choosing their breakfast foods, and then heading to class. Breakfast and lunch provide those wonderful opportunities to meet and greet friends, separate but together, engaging for a short while in social face-to-face time. Of our 223 students, 140 enjoy face-to-face learning, and as our student rep said, that number is growing daily. As best as we are able, remote instruction parallels class instruction, in-class instruction. Teachers who are truly superheroes continually devise ways to meet our students' needs. They teach hard, face-to-face, all day long, and then extend their efforts in the evenings and on weekends, planning, taping explanations and lessons, meeting students and families via Teams and the like. There are students who are remote learners but come in for one-to-one tutorial sessions. Our challenges are many, but we have seen so many opportunities to fulfill IEP goals and meet the special needs so many of our families have. Good is coming from so many of the things we are doing, and we are all learning as we go. We have found that multi-generational learning is catching on. Parents and grandparents and great-grandparents are all getting in on the act. One of our students has an aunt who is particularly good at math, and she visits each afternoon at 2 to help with the math lessons. And teachers have been so good about seizing these opportunities to teach our family members how to better teach our children. Lessons are organized and presented in such a manner that students, with patience, practice, and guidance, feel secure, and they are able to enjoy the best of both worlds. Directions lay out the week's work for those at school and for those at home. And whether working at school or working at home, one way or the other, we keep in constant touch with our families. Kamaja and her mom, look at that. And one of our new families, we haven't even gotten them in the building. They came to us from North Dakota. Can you imagine? And here we see 2 kitty cats and I think a gecko on Daddy's, maybe. But we don't bring in the pet stuff. Layla and Morgan. Some projects are presented. Learning is varied and creative. Some projects are presented in the back parking lot at school. Here's Ian presenting his, while others are presented face to face. 3rd graders have been studying citizenship and all that goes into being an outstanding citizen. And they identified some of our own outstanding citizens and presented them with their own certificates. Science experiments continue, some at school, while others at home. Jacob grew his own cabbage and even entered it in a contest. We haven't heard yet whether it won or not, but I think it should have. And here's Talon. Her assignment was to share one of the important things that she learned. Almost. The Atlantic Ocean is the 2nd largest ocean in the world, is what she is saying, and it was precious. Sorry about that. Our 4-year-olds, 30 plus of them, are doing remarkably well to be so little and to wear masks. Here's Maylee at home showing off her rainbow fish. Each child in pre-K received a copy of that favorite children's book, and many of you may know it. The rainbow fish shared his beautiful different colored scales with all of his friends, and they have been studying friendship. Last week's theme was all about being a good friend, and we have a picture of our boys and girls at home and at school, so they know all of their classmates. They even made little friendship bracelets with those little pony beads, I believe they're called, representing each member in their class. Our classes at school stick really close to classrooms. No longer do we move through the hallways without care. Resource teachers travel to the classrooms, protecting our cohorts, adding yet another layer of protection, and heaven forbid, enabling us to accurately trace if that should become necessary. Library, this is a music class. Stephanie, if you'll go back, I'm sorry, wasn't fast enough. There, do you see the bongo drums? And we're playing the xylophone there with Ms. Edwards up at the front desk. We have not been singing, and that creates quite a large void. But we are making music, and we are making music together. Our wellness classes take place outside whenever possible. Custodians disinfect our playground equipment during morning announcements so that we begin every day in a sanitized fashion. Our playground is used, as you all know, by many community members often. Teachers follow through with hand washing and disinfecting on their own. We are particularly aware at Stonewall of the emotional needs of our children. And Ms. Boswell, here's an art project with Briley showing off her art. We are particularly aware of the social emotional needs of our children, and Ms. Boswell, our wonderful counselor, has interviewed every single child at Stonewall Jackson. She called her interviews COVID checks. And together with Mr. Sizemore, our CIS site coordinator, student and family needs have been identified, are identified, and in an ongoing fashion being addressed. Few days go by at Stonewall Jackson in which home visits are not made. Likewise, counseling sessions, individual goal setting, lessons and daily instruction are designed to waylay anxiety, stress, fears, and uncertainty. To that end, one of our newest ventures is a news channel designed to inform and include the children in healthy, inclusive activities related to character building and social emotional support. SJES Support You News. Oh, I hope it plays. Maybe a little cheesy. We're just getting started. And the wonderful Ms. Boswell. This Support You News. Big things coming. This year, we've planned many opportunities for you to we have Mindful Monday. We have Mindful Monday, Thoughtful, what Tuesday? Wise Word Wednesday, Mindful Monday. Let's see what Tuesday is. Thankful Tuesday, things we are thankful for. Wise Word Wednesday. I'm really sorry. Thoughtful Thursday. And each of those will have, Friendship Friday, though everyone is remote, it will center around friendship, and they will have their eyes on us, looking for outstanding examples among our students. So join the movement, get involved, we need you. We're here to help you.
Add that video is part of the presentation that's on Board Docs, so if anybody would like to view that video at home, they will be able to do that.
Thank you. With the upcoming election and a continuing focus on character and citizenship, SJES is creating a mock election. These are our kindergarten flags. See those little handprints? With the help of Ms. Boswell and Mr. Sizemore, students for our election will identify those things in the school about which they'd like to have a voice. And once identified, the students will vote. They will actually see their name on a ballot. They will sign to receive their ballot, enter a private booth, and then hear their own election results. Our hope is that each child will experience democracy, helping them conceptualize the idea of voting and the importance of each voice, regardless of gender, race, culture, socioeconomic status, or beliefs, being heard. Each and every one of us Later in the month, division-wide, all elementary schools will celebrate Anti-Bullying Spirit Week, complete with crazy hats and dress as we stand united against bullying. And we will also enjoy a digital career day. Students will showcase selected careers on our SJ Supports You news. And lastly, we enjoy continued community partnerships. This past week, Bristol Public Library set up our first literacy walk. And here you see pre-K enjoying moving from poster to poster outside as we read a story about dinosaurs. And next month, a new walk will be enjoyed. Our local DAR, Fort Chiswell chapter, presented Stonewall Jackson with 3 special books in honor of Constitution Week, 3rd week in September, 2 on women's suffrage, and 1 on the history of our Constitution. That's right in with our study. And of course, I would be remiss if I did not end our report by sharing the news that our own beautiful inside and out Karen Branson, Stonewall Jackson Elementary 3rd grade teacher, was named the 2020 Rotary Outstanding Teacher. With her is our very own superintendent, Dr. Perigin, and Hannah Cooper, who was named the 2018 Rotary Outstanding Teacher. So these two teach 3rd grade together, a powerful team. Karen was indeed deserving, as was Hannah, and we are so very proud of them both. I hope you can see at Stonewall Jackson we're doing what we have always done, the very best with what we're given. And these are indeed challenging times. We thank each of you for all that you are doing, your ongoing support. We are in this together, and together we are going to get through this. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Brittle. And Stonewall Jackson. Next is Superintendent's report. Dr. Perigin.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I was just notified our live stream is not working. I just sent out a tweet and added to our Facebook page to let folks know that. You can pick up our live stream on BVA's Facebook page, who is also streaming the meeting. So we've tried to get that information out. I'm going to have to start putting my report earlier in the meeting because with such great student reps, they're stealing all the thunder that I have. But great job, ladies. Y'all did a great job on the report. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and members, citizens of Bristol, I wanted to share with you a few things that we have going on in Bristol, Virginia Public Schools. First of all, I introduced a couple months ago the Amazon Future Engineer program that Bristol, Virginia Public Schools has been chosen to be a part of. With the goal, it was just us and Wise County in this area who were chosen to be part of it. There are other school divisions across the Commonwealth. But the idea is with Amazon coming to Virginia, we need to leverage ourselves here in Southwest Virginia with ways to get those jobs and other jobs that are associated with Amazon coming down to Southwest Virginia. And so we're proud to be part of that. We've been planning for a couple of months now, and I want to give you an update on where we are in this report, and then we'll have an opportunity to discuss this later on in the session, in the meeting. So it's actually called the Computer Science Ready School Pilot Program. It's sponsored by Amazon, their Future Engineer program. As you know, the Future Engineer program has the idea that they want to encourage and recruit non-traditional students into the technology sector. That includes students from low socioeconomic backgrounds, families that are from black and brown families, and also girls into the technology sectors. And so we're really excited about bringing this program into Bristol, Virginia Public Schools. And so, and part of that, we're in phase 1. We're declaring the variables and kind of setting our vision. And we did that this past week. I will tell you on the next slide, we had to choose from these different impact areas. Those are personal agency, joy, and fulfillment. So in other words, finding work that you enjoy doing, economic and workforce development, learning competencies and literacies, school reform and improvement, equity and social justice, technological, social, and scientific innovation, and citizen and civic engagement. And there are multiple goals in each of those categories, and we had to choose 3 of those goals as part of our vision for where this project is going. And so as you can see from this next slide, those are the 14 goals that we had to choose from, and they had to come from each of those impact areas. And when our vision, our impact team met, we developed our vision that you'll see on the next slide goes into the following 3 categories. Economic and workforce development, our goal is to make sure that we recruit jobs. We're part of the recruiting process here in the city of Bristol, which we've tried to be in many other aspects, but that's one of our goals. Also, we wanted to tie what we're learning in computer science to the 5 C's that Virginia has set forth as far as what learning should look like in the 21st century. And then finally, equity and social justice. We want to make sure that we're providing opportunities for success for all students, regardless of their background and their socioeconomic, race, gender, all those different statuses. So those are going to be our 3 focus goals as we move through the process. And Ms. Huffman is our impact team leader on this, and you'll have an opportunity to ask questions of her at a later agenda item here later tonight. Also wanted to update you on the remote learning. And you've heard in both of the presentations already that we are having students come back to us. I wouldn't say in droves, but they're certainly coming back in large numbers. Last week we had 3 students who switched to remote learning from in-person learning. They had various reasons they did that, and those students were from Virginia High. But we had 38 students who came back to us in person from remote learning. 14 of those were at Virginia High. 11 of those were at the middle school, and 13 at our 4 elementary schools. One of the things that we've talked about all along, our plan has been centered around balancing risk, and one of those things that we're going to have to relook at as we balance risk going into the year is every time students come back, our class, the amount of space in our classes gets smaller and smaller as far as social distancing goes. So we're going to have to be very creative about how we provide socially distanced classroom spaces and protect our students and staff as more students come back to us. Just to give you an update on how COVID looks in our community, obviously you know that we've had a steady increase up through September, but if you'll see that, follow that yellow line specifically, that is the rolling 7-day average. As you can see, we hit that peak there in early September, and we've had a steady decline ever since. We've had even better results in our school community as we still over the last couple of weeks, and this may change even as we're talking right now, but we've not had a positive case anywhere in our schools in over 2 weeks. And then finally, you'll see on the next slide is you'll see where that spike actually occurred. That was in the 2nd week of September, where we had 34 cases in 1 week, and most recently we've only had 7 and 8 new cases in our community. So that's kind of a summary of where we are COVID-wise. I will let you know a couple of other items. As part of my work with the Coalition of Small and Rural Schools, our leadership team is having a Zoom meeting with Secretary Carney tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock to discuss the priorities of our coalition as we go into the new legislative session. And so we're really excited about that advocacy work. Also, as our fine student reps mentioned, we did have some of our advisory team meetings since our last school board meeting. I met with our student advisory team at Virginia High School. Also met with our student equity advisory team, which is a new committee that we're meeting with. We've had our community equity stakeholder meeting, had some good input there. And so we're looking forward to continuing those conversations. And even we hope to maybe bring our student equity committee together with our stakeholder equity committee so that we can have some real candid conversations with those 2 groups together. We're really excited about that possibility. And then finally, as our student reps also mentioned, we are expanding our partnership with Southwest Virginia Community Health Systems. We now offer a clinic, and as I told you, I think in an email, urgent care at Van Pelt from 8 o'clock to 4 o'clock, 4 days a week. That's open to any student or staff member in Bristol, Virginia Public Schools. So if we have a student at Washington Lee who needs to get a doctor's appointment and can't get there, we can arrange transportation and get them to Van Pelt for that doctor's visit. As a matter of fact, today we had last week we had a student who needed to enroll at Van Pelt, but they didn't have a physical. They couldn't get a physical scheduled with their doctor, and because of this partnership, we were able to do the physical right there at Van Pelt and get that student enrolled. What we're hoping to do as well is, by making a few changes to the location of where we're doing the clinic, we are going to be able to, in the very near future, we're going to be offering COVID testing at Van Pelt for our students and staff only, but we'll be able to do that instead of waiting till between 4 and 6 on Mondays and Thursdays. We'll be able to do it right there at Van Pelt anytime during the school day. So that's going to really help our response to COVID-19. But even better than that, they will also be doing flu and strep testing. So as we start to encounter those issues throughout the school year, we'll be way ahead of the curve. So we're really, really excited about that partnership. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have to share tonight.
Dr.
awesome.
Perigin, may I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
We're one of the few systems that have in class 4 days a week,
Yes, sir.
and I wonder what is the per capita rate of infection in our system versus the ones that are doing hybrid?
Well, I can tell you what ours is. I can't speak for the others, but we've had 2 positive student cases since we began school on August the 20th. What my thought is on that, I was really worried that by coming back in person that we would have an increase in student cases, but we felt like with our plan we were ready to deal with that increase and thought that as we balanced risk it would make it worthwhile. But what we're seeing is that by providing a safe environment for our students to come, where we have very strict mitigations, we're actually providing a safer environment in school than students have access to out of school. So in the city of Bristol alone, there have been 3 times as many cases of our remote learning students than we have from our in-person students. So I think that's a testament to our reopening committee and all the hard work that was put into that, and then also our staff for implementing that plan.
So effectively, by being in school, they're in a bubble.
By being in a school with strong mitigations,
They're in a
you're
bubble.
creating a bubble. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Perigin. Next up is public comment. I've got 4 cards. If you would, when I call your name, just if you would state your residence and your name, and try to keep it to 3 minutes. We'll try to help you keep it to 3 minutes. First up is Trayvon L. Brown.
Hi, my name is Trayvon L. Brown. I live in Marion, Virginia, 24354. It is very important and concerning that we as a whole take a look at the insensitive comments that were made on the Facebook post, where we are in a time where police brutality is and was never a joking matter. As the chairman of a school board, I would think Mr. Fletcher would have been more professional when told that the superintendent would be more interested in his comments. He did not act professional. Instead, he facetiously offered his boss's number to the person that made the comment. For those of you that don't know, facetious means treating serious issues with deliberately inappropriate humor. Like I stated before, racial injustice isn't a joking matter, and your job as the chairman of Bristol education system should not be taken lightly. As a black student, some of us view Mr. Fletcher's comments very disturbing. As a black young man living in Southwest Virginia, African Americans and people of color, parents, students, and teachers have the right to have someone leading their educational system who recognize the values and subject of stigmatic racism. To be the chairman of a school board is to understand cyberbullying and not to engage in it. To understand bullying in general, not to be a bully, at least I would think. There is no reason for all of you to sit on this school board and not take action. You either step up or step down. You all are leaders of a school board. You're supposed to want to better the education system. You're supposed to want to better the education system. You're supposed to want to better the education system. Steve Fletcher should not have a seat on the board that makes sure children get treated with equal respect and dignity. His comments did not show that he cared about fair treatment of students. Instead, they showed when he had the chance to go high, he took the low route every chance he got. Jacob Blake did not deserve what happened to him, and no longer as the people can we allow this type of behavior to just pass on by, especially in our school systems. I've told you why your comments didn't sit well with me, Mr. Fletcher, and why you should be 30 seconds. And why you should be removed from the school board. My question is, why did the post about a black man getting shot in the back 7 times and a 17-year-old white male walking away free after killing 2 people upset you? May I remind you the post was showing sympathy to Jacob Blake, the black male. I'll wait.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
All right. Black Lives Matter. Remember to vote. You all have a wonderful night.
Stephen Adams. Stephen Adams.
I'm a citizen of Bristol, Virginia. I don't even have children, but I came here to address you and the issue that
Excuse me.
Mr. Brown just brought up.
Could you move a little close to the microphone?
Sure.
Yeah. We can't seem to shut off the system back there.
Okay. Can everybody hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'm a citizen of Bristol, Virginia. I'm not even a parent. I don't have children in the school system, but I came to express my concern about the comments that were made by Mr. Fletcher. I'll read one of them. What kind of stupid and oblivious caption would you post? Is this spam of some type? You need to be let out to pasture. If you don't know the context of this comment or what the picture was about, I suggest that you ask Mr. Fletcher. Maybe he'll be willing to show it to you. But we cannot allow this to continue. We can't allow, as Mr. Brown said, this behavior to go unanswered, and by not doing anything, you're complicit, you're complicit, you're complicit, you're complicit, and you're complicit by saying that this behavior is okay. It's not. It has to end. And as a citizen that does not have children in the school system, I came to listen to a school board meeting, to understand what it's all about, and to say what I'm saying right now, and that should speak volumes. I'm here on an evening when I don't have to be, because I feel strongly about this, and I believe that you need to resign. Thank you.
Thank you. Misty Russell.
I spoke last time at the meeting about the racism and arrogance and the bullying that was also in the post. Thank you. I also observed the same thing in the last meeting, the same type of behavior. Like when Miss Reese got up to speak, and you made sure you told her she only had 3 minutes. When your friend got up to speak, you didn't interrupt him, and he spoke for 8. That's a form of systematic racism. That's a form of intimidation. What you reminded me of was my son was abused by his dad, and he also worked in the school system, and he thought he was above that as well, and people within the school system fostered that. But he also tried to intimidate him, and that's what I seen in you, the use of intimidation and using your power to keep people quiet, just like the example of limiting the time that people talk or making sure we know, or the separation. Really, I think a lot of people have spoken and expressed concern, and I think the school board has failed to move. We just have a question, which I don't think we'll get an answer, that why is Mr. Fletcher still here? It's unacceptable. At some point, the people stop asking and we act. And it's either this board, as Trayvon said, as a representative of JEPC, we're trying to dismantle racism in the school system. Either you act appropriately, or we will act appropriately. And I think that it's time that the people stop asking and demonstrate the need for your removal.
Thanks, Ms. Russell. You would just state your name and residence, please. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Michael Stewart. I'm in Bristol, Virginia. I'm representing my fiance, Erica Knopflin. On August 30th, 2020, Steve Fletcher made some disturbing remarks on a Facebook post that was including an illustration of depicting two white police officers shooting a black man in the back while a white man walked away carrying a rifle. September 14th, school board meeting, members of the community spoke out on Fletcher's remarks, calling for his resignation. September 15th, Fletcher apologized only to the staff members for his actions. The Community Concerned Citizens Group is anticipating a notice of dismissal of Steve Fletcher. He lacks character and maturity and is just not up to the job for the Bristol, Virginia School Board. We do believe that Fletcher was being racist, sexist, ageist, and rude. He displayed an astounding lack of judgment, and his smugness about the relationship within this superintendent, Keith Perrigan, is evident of that. Bristol, Virginia School Board, you have sat by and said nothing. We hold you responsible, and as to the board, hold Fletcher responsible for his actions alone. Community concerned citizens will not repose from this issue until actions of his removal of Steve Fletcher has been from the board of the Bristol, Virginia School Board and is resolved.
Thank you. Yes, sir. If you would, state your name and your residence, please.
Forrest Barker, Bristol, Virginia. I'm here this evening to defend Steve Fletcher against ongoing attacks and accusations that he made racist comments on Facebook and effectively tagging him as racist. These groups want to either want him to resign or be removed from the school board. To me, this is a classic case of cancel culture, which is the popular practice of withdrawing support for public figures and companies that have done or said something considered objective or offensive. Cancel culture is generally discussed as being performed on social media in the form of group shaming. And you all described the picture, and I guess everybody knows what it is. And then Steve's comments, one of them, what a stupid, oblivious caption you would post. Is this spam or of some type? You need to be let out to pasture. And the other one, oh, did I happen to mention your post was disgusting? The rest of the comment was just bickering back and forth. Okay, when I looked at the picture, the first thing that came to my mind was this is an anti-cop and meant to provoke a negative and highly charged portrait of police as racist pigs. And that goes both white, black, and minority officers, other minority officers. Blue is now the bad guy. Make no mistake, when extremists on the far left and right see pictures like this, it ultimately puts law enforcement in danger of being assaulted or killed. They're constantly being attacked by rioters in cities across the country, and recently 2 sheriff deputies were almost killed in LA while sitting in their squad car. I think this is what Steve was, matter of fact, I know this is what Steve was fired up about when he made the comment. Total disrespect for law enforcement. I mean, you've heard the things. Pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon. No justice, no peace, defund the police. I mean, is that what we want? Is that what this is? So for one, I see Steve's comment on this picture standing strong support for law enforcement, and it's shameful that he is being labeled as a racist. And just let me just say this too. If Steve were to step down or be removed, then I'm sure they have a list of somebody who he needs to be replaced with. And if the other members don't go on that list, they're coming for you too. This is the council culture. You'll be on the target. You'll be number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4 on their next target. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you all for your comments. All right. Next up is a consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Second.
Ms. Jones?
Mr. Alice.
Yes.
Mr. Foster.
Yes.
Mr. Goodpaster.
Yes.
Mr. White.
Yes.
Mr. Fletcher.
Yes. Okay, that takes us to action items. 5A, approval of request for additional staff from the athletic director. Is that Mr. Harper? Is he here? No?
I'll speak on his behalf, Mr. Chairman. This is a request. It's probably something we should have looked at in the past. However, we had a couple situations last year where Mr. Collins had to supervise a JV basketball team because we only had 2 basketball coaches, and so while the assistant and the head coach were coaching the varsity team, there was nobody supervising the JV team, and so that was an oversight on our part, and we would like to add a 3rd coach to girls basketball and boys basketball for the winter season.
Have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the request for additional staff for the athletic director.
Second.
Any discussion?
Is that just for
Wasn't
this year?
On my agenda, was it added today?
Is that just for this year?
Wasn't that put in an email today? Wasn't that added in an email today? No. What was that one?
The one added was the MOU.
That's right, whether Jennifer was, but
So this is just so I get this correct. It's a supervision thing. It's not a COVID thing. So will this be advertised outside of the school system?
Okay. Ms. Jones? Is that right?
Mr. Alice.
yes.
Mr. Foster.
Yes.
Mr. Goodpaster.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Yes. Next is the approval of request for additional staff to be paid from CARES Act funding. Dr. Perigin?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, there are some positions there, and one of them is for a front desk clerk. We had a resignation over the summer where we had someone who was covered the front, and we have not replaced that position, and so Miss Alston has been, and a secretary from the special ed department covered it the other part of the time, and then we have other secretaries from in the building covered during lunch. And part of the issue is that with that many people being in one work location, it does become an issue with COVID and the potential spread. If one of those people were to become infected, we would potentially have to quarantine all those folks. And so we'd recommend, and this is just for a remaining of the year through COVID, and will be paid for with CARES Act funding. And the other positions that you see there, I will maybe let Mr. White speak about that. Hold on, I'm on the wrong page.
That's not quite time yet.
Do we have the same attachment on both?
New positions 1 and new positions 2.
All right, so this is a position, it didn't show up on mine, but it's a new position. It's 2 positions for 5.5 hours per day for 5 days a week, $20 an hour. And this is to assist teachers with coordination of remote learning and with their students and families. Teachers are really doing, guys, I'm just telling you, teachers are really doing 2 jobs right now. They're teaching in person, and then they're also teaching the 30% of our students who are remote. And we have, as we did our mid-9 weeks report progress reports, we've noticed, and I think we knew this, but we have quantifiable data now that many of our remote students are struggling, and a lot of it has to do with engagement. And our teachers really just don't have the time to teach in person and still try to get those students engaged remotely. And so we're recommending that we hire a couple of folks to work with those families, whether it's with technology issues or just logging on, or if they need additional support, trying to help those families. As many of you know, we probably have a lot of grandparents and aunts and great uncles who are providing that child care and supervision during the day, and many of our families just need that additional support. This would also be paid for with CARES Act funding. This was actually brought up at Mr. White at our communications team meeting, and after looking into it further, Mr. White, if you want to say anything about it.
Well, can we do a motion first and then discuss?
It's all right. Where are we on the agenda actually on this?
5B, action items.
Okay. The one I had was the discussion item.
Right, you had asked to discuss it, and the discussion comes unfortunately after the action items, but anyway, this was at your recommendation at our communications meeting that we added these positions.
This is like a pretzel. I don't know what to say or when to say it.
Make a motion, then we can discuss it.
Yeah. Can we do that?
Robert's Rules of Order.
Which I'm not quite sure
I'll make
what
the motion.
motion's supposed to be.
I'll make the motion to request additional staff to be paid from CARES Act funding. Second.
Good, 'cause
Any
it's
discussion?
more than just that. Yeah.
Any discussion?
Is this the time for the discussion? Okay. Yeah, the problem's a huge problem, and it's one that's going to be with us for at least one more year, I think. I don't see any way out of this the next year. We're losing kids, basically, I've been involved with the Learning Buddies for years, Tyrone, and we've done this stuff together.
Speak in the mic.
Okay. I have a learning buddy that I had in kindergarten 7 years ago, and I've kept up with him every year. His mother was incarcerated. There was no father, no man in the house. There was nothing like that. We got this student up to, he was held back in kindergarten because he knew nothing. Nobody had worked with him. Nobody had done anything. So this little boy was held back in kindergarten for a year. This year he started middle school, so it's his 7th year. So I went up to see him in the middle school, and this is a straight A student from Highland View. They had gotten this kid up to straight A's. He was so happy with what he had and what he had accomplished, and you just go up to him and he just beamed all over the place. So he is one of our virtual students. His mother really didn't want to mess with it. He's a straight F student now. So when he comes back, chances are that he's never going to graduate because he's probably going to wind up a couple of years behind. In fact, the other day, the assistant principal at the middle school told me that they weren't really sure where he was, if he was in the home, that they hadn't been able to do this. I know talking to the teachers, one of the problems is that parents are blocking the phone numbers. So when a teacher who is supposed to call them and keep in touch with them, they see who it is and they don't answer the phone. Also today it occurred to me, these people, a lot of our families, these families have kids in, say, 11th grade, 9th grade, 7th grade, maybe some down in the elementary schools. And we've got all of these teachers and everybody calling off and on, you know, and it would drive me crazy if I had 3 or 4 kids in the school system and teachers were calling me day and night about their progress. I've also heard, and I hope that, Jeff, that we can do something with the computers. I don't know, can we locate computers to where they are and when they're turned on? Because like I heard that some of the people had used up this hotspot thing in just in a few days, and the kids couldn't possibly get on there again. So, you know, I don't think we can wait, and I'm so glad that Dr. Perigin has added these other people to help. I think, you know, it's going to be, as I said, not just this year. We got to get it right this year, but it has to be ready next year, because it's not only the teachers, it's our administrators that are. It's too much for everybody. So, and I talked to Jan today, and thank you very much, Jan, Dr. Huffman, who's explaining all the difference between virtual and distance learning and so on. And I mean, it was a real education for me just to find out what's what. So that's why thank you very much for doing this. I appreciate it.
Thank you for sharing it in communications. Talking about administrators too, just an added note on Friday, Mr. Matlock, Mr. Stamper, and Mr. Jones were doing home visits for this reason. And Mr. Matlock was actually bit by a pit bull on one of his home visits. So Mr. Matlock is all in favor of this recommendation.
That makes me glad because I was supposed to go with him on a home visit.
Will these folks also be helping with taking the attendance? I know that was an issue several weeks ago.
Well, and it would be, because if we're taking attendance for remote learners based on engagement and turning in assignments, and so we have a lot of students who aren't doing those assignments, so they're being marked absent, so that will help with that as well.
So my question is, I mean, I understand what everybody's saying is, but the funding part of it, again, because I know we're getting all this money that everybody's pulling out of the air like they did in 2008 with this CARES funding. Which one, you said the central office one was only for the rest of this year?
As are the 3 positions for the coordination of remote learning.
So all these positions
all these are for the remainder of this year.
Hire people and say, okay, we don't need you anymore if we don't have enough money to pay for
right,
you.
And we're going to advertise it that way as well,
okay,
as temporary positions.
But we're going to try to make.
Well, yeah, if we're having remote learning next year and we have CARES Act funding to pay for it, but Mr. Foster hit the nail on the head. Right now, there's money available through state and federal means for us to do this additional work. But if it's not there in the future, and we'll talk about that in a future action item as well. Right now we have, because of CARES, we have money to do these things. If CARES dries up, we don't have that money any longer.
And Mr. White will tell you the same thing. I think he was the only one back here when I first got elected in 2008. You know, we were hiring, bringing people in, and then all of a sudden that money went away, and next thing you know, we're cutting positions, and we're getting flack from everybody saying, oh, you can't cut teachers, you can't do this, you can't do that, and that's the hardest thing we ever did. So that's why I say I caution what we're doing with this CARES funding. And with that being said, my next question is, the aides, are they working in the school or are they going into homes?
Both.
And how do you actually, who's going to track that?
Well, we can clock because of our time management system, we can clock in from anywhere. So if that's what you're talking about, tracking that, we'll be.
No, I'm talking about if Tyrone Foster takes this job and I clock in at home, and I don't go to these people's house to where I'm supposed to be helping them, I'm still getting paid. How are we tracking that?
Well, we're going to do it. We have an identified list of students who are struggling with remote learning, and there will be assigned a certain list of those students. And so if we're not seeing progress from Tyrone Foster students, then we'll be following up on that.
Okay. And I'm not saying that any of our people would do that. I'm
Right.
just, make sure we're
it's a
covering
whole
the
different
bases to
world,
make
you're
sure,
right.
because we are in uncharted territory right now.
You know, one of the amazing things to me too is that all the schools I've been in are running perfectly. I mean, you go in the halls and the kids are wearing their masks, they're well behaved, they're quiet. You know, the principals, I think, will tell you discipline is really better than it's been in years. But it bothers me that we've got, what's our percentage now, between 35, 40 kids who are doing distance learning. That's nearly half of our kids that we, that's why I'm glad we're addressing this issue. I don't know that other places, even had the opportunity yet, because they're doing all virtual and whatever, and not really doing the actual in-classroom teaching. But it's amazing. I couldn't do it. I mean, these people went to school to learn how to teach. They did student teaching. They've been teaching for 5, 10, 15, 20 years in classroom. Now all of a sudden we hit them with virtual, which is like the difference between night and day. I was at Stonewall last week, and I observed 2 teachers working on the computer with their kids, doing the distance learning thing. I was absolutely amazed at the dedication of those teachers and how they could focus in on those kids. And so anyway, Linda, I hope I was can you hear me back there? Okay. I was very impressed with that, and I'm sure it's going on in all of our schools now. And I would really like to see a lot of people doing that too. I'm just to watch, not to grade them. I just want to see how it's done, because I don't know how to do it.
If I might suggest one thing that they might do is, just from what I've heard, through the Schoology, teachers are using various different things, different tools within that, which makes it extremely difficult when a student has this teacher for this subject and this teacher for this subject, this teacher for this subject, and they're all using different systems within Schoology. And if they can't figure out one, they can't figure out 3. And I think that's a lot of the problem as well, is if they can figure out what's being used within each program each teacher's using, it'd be very helpful to get them up to par. I mean, if you can't get on one, you can't get on the other 2. Is kind of what I've heard. So
Right. Schoology is the gateway, and so that's why we've chosen Schoology, because any teacher can put everything they do in Schoology.
Right.
And so if they don't get into Schoology, if they're having trouble accessing Schoology, it prevents them from accessing the other things as well. So having somebody training these folks to understand how Schoology works as well as the other apps is going to be important as well.
I heard, Mr. White, I think you may have mentioned the hotspots being used up. Is that something we're having problems with?
We are, and Mr. Shelton can actually track the time that those hotspots are being used. And I'm not saying this is in every case. In some of those cases, those hotspots are being used for large data downloads 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I would assume that means somebody in the house is using it for Netflix or something similar. It's not necessarily that they're using that time during the school day or traditional times that work would be done. And so as long as you're not streaming, the amount of data that they have on those hotspots should do them for the entire month. But if you start streaming YouTube or Netflix or Hulu or other things like that, and I'm not saying our students are or parents are, but it's very possible that somebody in the house is getting access and using those other streaming type services. Jeff, would you say that's close to?
And then the other thing that we do is if they go over, we try to educate them, and then we just give them another hotspot that will get them through the month, and then we just trade off with them. So only ones that we have a relationship with. It's actually cheaper, it's unlimited, it's better service than the hotspots, but it doesn't solve a problem if a kid has to go to a grandparent's during the day.
Yeah.
They have to have a hotspot.
Right.
We're not going to go install.
So we don't do that. We don't, like, if you go to the parent, here's the hotspot, but it doesn't necessarily go to the grandparent or the neighbor.
A hotspot will. You can take a hotspot anywhere.
But they don't, they're not doing it. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that if for those families that are sending a kid somewhere, those have to have hotspots.
Yeah.
And there's no way you can police the use of the hotspots.
Oh, we can replace it. Yeah, we can tell you exactly what they're doing on their device and on the
But you can't shut it down while they're doing it. You just have to, just what you read the next day. I mean, I know our kids and everybody uses it, but still yet I don't like to see people, whoever is doing it, abusing what they've got. Because I know at one time we had devices in schools that we locked down when they were going on different websites that they weren't supposed to be on.
The websites are still filtered, and we could lock them down. But, I mean, one of the problems that we're having is teachers are using so many different resources to educate kids.
I think what really bothers me too, we concentrated so much on our dropout rate and getting our dropout rate, as low as we could possibly get it. And these parents don't seem to care. I mean, I cannot imagine using up your hotspot or staying in bed and you don't care where your kid is. I drive through town and I see kids of all ages walking the street, and I don't know who's doing what, but we wind up with it's our fault if something happens, and our system loses money with the state and accreditation and everything else. We're the ones the educators, not the board, but the educators are the ones that get the blame for this, and it's just not fair. It's not fair at all. So I'm really, again, I can't thank you enough for doing this.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Next is approval of 2020-2021 school board budget revision number 3. Is that Ms. Jones?
Ms. Jones?
Thank you, sir. This is a minimal budget revision. On line item 85, you will see it reflects $394,311, which is additional CARES money that was received from the city, and it will be utilized to purchase a special needs bus and for air quality improvement projects throughout the division. The expenditure portion of the CARES funding is on line item 807. The remaining revisions are state-approved budget revisions for a few grants, and the net increase in revenues and expenditures is $394,278.51, and again, all this increase relates to a grant, and there's no other changes in the other funds.
I move approval of the 2020-2021 school board budget revision number 3 as presented.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just have a question for Ms. Jones. With the CARES Act funding, I mean, that increases our appropriation from the city. when it comes time to negotiate funding for next year, will it show separate from CARES funding from their regular appropriation?
They are not treating it as an appropriation per se.
Okay.
It's being treated as a grant, so
Okay.
we will submit reimbursements to them and they'll pay it back as a grant.
Okay.
So it will show separately, yes.
All right.
Okay. Ms. Jones?
Mr. Alvis?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Goodpaster?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mr. Fletcher?
Yes.
She keeps freezing. Good question. She keeps freezing.
Approval of contract purchase greater than $50,000, skylight replacement for swimming pool wing.
Mr. Chairman, we received our bid since our last meeting to replace the skylight at the Virginia High School swimming pool. Let me first let you know that the construction of the new roof has already started. The contractor has got work underway. Supplies have been ordered. Plans are being made to use the back parking lot for staging. The decision now just needs to be made. Are we going to add the skylight, which it'll be a little bit different than the skylight that we currently have. As you can see from the amount there, it's around $80,000. Brings the total of the project to around $320,000. If you'll remember, when we first spec'd this out, our architects estimated a total cost of around $350,000. So we're coming in under that initial estimate. In speaking to Ms. Jones, we can make it work through our facilities money. If you'll remember, part of our reduction from the city that we worked with after COVID hit was we were not able to carry over the $200,000 into facilities like we had in years past. So this is going to make us tight for the rest of the year. We will have money for normal maintenance projects. However, if we have a big project that comes up, we would have to talk to the city about funding any additional large type projects. But the small projects on our CIP list we're still going to be able to do those in our normal maintenance. So we can make this work. This is not something we can postpone. If we want it to get completed by the time swim season starts, we need approval tonight. And if not, if we don't get that approval tonight, we'll just go through with the normal roof as we get ready for swim season.
Have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the contract purchase greater than $50,000 for the skylight replacement for the swimming pool.
Second.
Do we need a skylight?
Well, I was going to question. I was going to question if it's glass or.
I mean, if we didn't have it, we'd have a normal roof, correct?
I think you need. I mean, that place is dark in there without the light coming in. It's really dark in there with that. I mean, in swimming pool.
That's why we have lights.
We not have lights?
Yeah, but you don't need to have them on all the time.
Well, the
You do if
present
you don't have a
skylight.
skylight.
The present skylight, there's no light coming through it.
So, Mr. Buck.
Didn't used to be that way.
Yeah, the present skylight is obsolete, it's not functional, and we have water dripping down through it. The new skylight is designed to have a more of a wood deck that will come up in an A-type frame. There'll be some side glass, which we call storefront glazing on the sides, go all the way around, and then we'll add new exhaust fans on the eaves of the new unit. This is something that we really need to move on because the old one it's falling apart. I mean, it's just brittle.
So the skylight also doubles as an exhaust system?
Yes, sir, it does.
And if we didn't have that, what would we do?
We'd have a lot of moisture in there. And one of the things that has happened to the old roof is where that is a tractable skylight, and that has failed years and years ago. It's not feasible to try to fix it.
What? Excuse me. Is it is the old one an exhaust system as well?
Yes. I mean that's where we've got the exhaust fans in there.
Okay.
It had
Yes.
Venetian louvers that
Yes.
open and close, and they broke a long time ago.
So they they weren't operating.
They were not.
So then
But there is ventilation fans that are part of the roof that are functional, and so if we don't approve this skylight project, we will have to add a ventilation to it, but it won't be over $50,000. It would be something we could do internally. So we could do ventilation without the skylight for less than the $80,000. The skylight is, again, it provides natural lighting, as Mr. White says, and returns to more of the normal look of the building. But is it absolutely positively necessary that we have the
My
skylight?
question.
It is not absolutely positively necessary. However, if we don't do that, we will have to add ventilation to the current project, which will have some cost to it, but it won't be $80,000.
Probably do it for 10.
I wouldn't start to guess on that, but I would.
But wouldn't we still have to cover the hole?
That's part of the roof estimate already. The current roof estimate has that as part of the estimate. Correct, Mr. Buck?
I guess it's not going to be any cheaper next year or the year after that, so I think it's probably, maybe we just need to just go ahead and proceed, I guess. Like I said, I'm not a swimmer. Don't spend a lot of time that close to that much water. No.
Well, if we have a roof and we have ventilation, I don't see the necessity for a skylight, so I'm going to vote against it.
We've neglected the pool area for a long time. Anything else? Ms. Jones?
Mr. Alvis?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Goodpaster?
No.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mr. Fletcher?
Yes. Approval of contract purchase greater than $50,000, Highlands Community Services for mental health services.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, as Mr. Foster said earlier, the CARES Act money continues to come in. In addition to the CARES Act money we've already discussed, we were notified Friday. Let me just first brag on our leadership team and our staff. The state actually put out some grant applications for the remaining CARES Act funding they had at the state level, and Bristol, Virginia Public Schools earned another $261,000 in additional CARES Act funding that will be used for technology, to backfill some technology, some mental health, some cleaning supplies. And so, again, right now, as Mr. Foster said, the money is flowing from the federal government for CARES Act. Unfortunately, right now we're being told it's one-time money, so we're trying to make sure we do that on expenditures that are only one time. This, what we're getting ready to talk about, falls into that category. Let me also tell you, right in the middle of COVID-19, Virginia is undergoing a behavioral health redesign that will completely restructure how behavioral health services are provided across the Commonwealth. During the transition, many of the services that Highlands Community Services provided for our students are no longer billable. We understand how important these services are to the success of our students, and we've worked very hard to develop a plan to provide the services during the interim. Approving the next two items, which are both involving mental health services, will ensure that we serve our students appropriately and will go a long way in helping us meet the socio-emotional goals we set in our return to school plan. Last year, for example, Highlands Community Services provided 17 day treatment counselors across our division, and were able to bill Medicaid for those services. That number this year has been reduced to 6, and Medicaid will fall short of the required reimbursement it costs to keep those folks employed. These two agreements will come back and provide 14 full-time positions and will be paid mostly through CARES Act funds, less $45,000 that will come from additional federal funds out of Title IV. We are hoping that the state redesign is friendly to the services we provide in schools, as this will enable us not to incur the cost during the second semester if the redesign goes in our favor. So you will see that there's some second semester costs there as well. If Highlands Community Services begins to be able to bill for some of those, we won't have that full. So this is a worst case scenario. It'll be paid for out of one-time monies. It'll be a one-time expense. I was talking to our folks today. If something doesn't change by January and February, we're going to have to get really creative, because our staff and our students and our families have come to depend on the mental health and behavioral health services that we provide in schools. And if we don't have some change in that area and there's not money available, we'll be in dire need of those services next year. And so that's kind of an introduction to the next two agenda items, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Have a motion.
Make a motion to approve contract purchase greater than $50,000 for Highlands Community Services for mental health services.
Second.
Any discussion?
So this $90,000, is that coming through CARES?
So
or is that plus CARES?
Initially, that $90,000 was going to come completely from Title IV funds. However, when we got the information this weekend that we had received the state grant for CARES Act funding, we're actually going to split that. We had written into the grant $45,000 from the CARES Act funding. We received that, so now $45,000 will come from CARES Act and $45,000 will come from Title IV.
But there's no more than $90,000 is what we're paying.
No, that is the max, and that amount is the second one is where there could be some additional savings, but that $90,000 is a definite, and at most.
And that's for eight positions.
Yeah, it takes care of 8 positions. They'll partially bill for 6 of those day treatment counselors, and that will take up the remaining cost of those 6 day treatment counselors that can't be billed through Medicaid.
And again, it's CARES funding that we have to use, or else we'll lose it.
Right. This CARES Act, this is coming from the state grant, CARES Act $45,000. The Title IV would not fall into that category, but the CARES Act would.
Okay. Ms. Jones?
Mr. Alvis?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Pastor?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Fletcher?
Yes. Approval of contract purchase greater than $50,000, Highlands Community Services for COVID-19 mental health services.
Mr. Chairman, this is just in addition after we reached our original agreement with Highlands Community Services and saw that we were going to lose 11 day treatment counselors. Especially our principals became very concerned, and so we got creative about how we could partner with them in a new kind of way. And so we actually wrote a grant to City Council to use part of their CARES Act funding, and they approved $180,000 towards that end. So this, the first half of the year will be paid for through money, through City Council CARES Act funding. The second half of the year, which I mentioned earlier, will be paid from our CARES Act funding. However, we're hoping that Highlands Community Service will be able to bill for more of those services by then, and we won't have to use that full $150,000 from our CARES Act.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the contract purchase greater than $50,000 from Highlands Community Services for COVID-19 mental health services.
Second.
If for some reason they are able to bill Medicaid and such, then what about that money that?
So this is the crazy world, not only is COVID crazy, but COVID is even crazier. And so city council's money has to be spent by December. So locality CARES Act money has to be sent by December. That's why we're doing 180,000 by December, so we can get that whole, if you don't spend it by then, you lose it. Our CARES Act money can go into next September. And so that's why we're taking the second half of the year to pay with our CARES Act money. So if we don't spend that full $150,000, it opens up for that money that we can hold on to get the next school year open, or to pay for additional cleaning supplies or transportation needs or technology needs that we would have come up in the second semester. However, the city CARES Act funding has to be depleted by December.
Okay.
So what does Highlands have to do to make sure that they try to bill? I mean,
well, it's going to depend on how the redesign at the Virginia Behavioral Health System, the Virginia Behavioral Health Department comes up with. Right now, day treatment is turning into a tiered service, so you have to go through A, B, C before you can ever get to D to pay for that service. And by the time we get to that, Highlands Community Services run out of funds. And so what we're hoping for is that the services that we're being creative and coming up with, which is school crisis counselors, they're going to also be they're going to help us with the remote learning as well, except for with the learning part of it, they're going to be part of the mental health solutions with our families who are remote at home. And what our hope is, as the redesign happens at the state level, more of those services will be deemed as billable. And again, we just won't know till that comes as that process occurs.
Does that have to come through General Assembly, or is that just through the health department?
Departmental. It's coming through departmental, yes, sir.
How do we administer these services to the people that aren't coming to school?
So we are, two of these workers are going to actually be going into homes and providing those services there.
And they are, what triggers that? The parents call, or what?
That will be, everything that Highlands Community Service does comes through a referral basis, so it'll start either from a referral from the school or a referral from court.
From the court, you say?
The court can also make those referrals as well. We're just trying to do wraparound services for all of our students, whether they're in person or they're learning remote. And I can tell you, it has been very challenging. And when you throw in the state behavioral health department making changes right at the same time, it's made it very difficult. As you guys know, some of the most important work that we do is centered around behavioral health with our students. If we can't take care of those needs, we can't even begin the learning process.
But this is separate from the other three positions that we approved earlier.
Yeah, yes, and that part, the remote part of it, is a small piece of it with Highlands Community Services. The one we approved earlier is all focused on academics and academic engagement.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Goodpaster?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mr. Fletcher?
Yes. Approval of contract purchase greater than $50,000, 35 passenger SPED bus.
Yeah, refrain from using those acronyms. That is a special needs bus. Students, it'll have a ramp and a wheelchair access onto that bus. Part of the issue that we have as a result of COVID-19 is we have two of those buses currently in the division, but because of limited capacity, we're having to make multiple runs, which is really causing us to struggle to get those students the amount of services they need throughout the course of the day. So this will help with that as long as we can find a bus driver to fill it, because we're also experiencing a bus driver shortage. This will also be paid with through City Council CARES Act funding. You will see another request at our next board meeting to improve ventilation at our schools, and we'll be using City CARES Act funding for that as well. But this is another piece. This is the second round of the city's CARES Act funding, and just probably take a brief moment to say thank you to the city manager and to City Council for approving the amount of funding that they have out of their CARES Act coffers.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of a contract purchase greater than $50,000 for a 35-passenger special needs bus.
Second.
Can this bus, let's say, I mean, can it be used for just regular transportation also?
Yes, sir. It can be.
I mean, in case we ever
Absolutely.
need extra
Absolutely.
capacity somewhere.
We actually had requested a special needs bus and a regular bus, and I think City Council wanted to, or the committee that approved that wanted to consider that as well, but they had limited amount of access. This should help with our budget process with the city as well, because we needed 2 new buses going into next budget cycle anyway, and this will take one of those off the list.
So 35 passenger, that's full size?
That is a full-size special needs bus, yes, sir. A regular bus without the ramps and the lifts can seat more, obviously.
Well, I want to thank the mayor or city council members that approved this, and the city manager for his passion in helping us with this, and I appreciate you especially for correcting the way it's written here, because that bothers me more than anything. So thank you for making that special needs.
Okay. Ms. Jones?
Mr. Alvis?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Pastor?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Yes. Approval of teacher evaluation document.
Good evening. I wanted to make you aware that the Virginia Department of Education actually did some work on the evaluation document back in January, and we had a committee. Actually, I gave every teacher the opportunity to serve on the committee, and I took up any takers. So the document that was created by the DOE was a really good document. And of course, all of the work that went into the development of our document several years ago, most of that information was repeated in the current document. So we used just about all of that. There was some language in the old document, the document that we are currently using, related to growth tables, which never did happen in the state of Virginia. And that really was useless to us. And we cut that when the state come out with the new evaluation document. All of that had been removed. So the impetus of this change really come from the DOE, in that they wanted to take the heavy weight on Standard 7 that was weighted on achievement, where teachers would write their own goals, which they still do, but it was weighted 4 times as heavy as all the other standards. And so the state made the recommendation that they would weight each of the goals, and I put this in the memo to you, that the VDOE's recommendation for the new evaluation instrument, they were all weighted at 1.5 each standard, with the exception of one standard which was weighted a 1. The committee did not really understand why only one of those standards would only be weighted 1, and all the others would be weighted 1.5. And the feel of the committee was that really, let's just not weight any of them. Let's just level all of them, and they will all be weighted equally as a 1. So that is what the committee agreed upon. I will tell you that the committee, we met on a few occasions. I shared the information with our BVEA reps, and also a couple of members were on that committee, and I also shared it with principals. Some of the principals had a couple of comments, but this is what we've come up with. And the document is long. It's about 85 pages, and there was some discussion about possibly cutting out some of the language earlier in it, but it is rich in research,
And my opinion is that it's a pretty good tool for training if we have new administrators coming in to be able to look at the entire document. So I'm happy to try to field any questions that you may have on the recommended changes. I would add one more thing. If this is approved tonight, then what we would do is we would go and we would look at the administrative evaluation tool, and we would make the similar changes. And one thing, I have assembled all of our school counselors, and the VDOE has created an evaluation tool for school counselors. And I remember as a principal, I was always frustrated trying to evaluate the school counselor with a document that really fit a teacher. And so we are looking at working on that document, and maybe here a little bit later on I'll be bringing that to you for approval as well.
So I'm confused about this. Is this a complete new thing?
Most of it is not new. I mean, what I did was I printed out our current document that we're using, and the document that was created by the VDOE, and I looked at what was different and what was the same. And the only thing that we removed in the new DOE document is an interim report that did not really seem to fit, because we use interim in a different, the language we use that was created back in 2012, we used the language of interim, so I had to make some changes there to make that okay.
I was a little confused because usually it's highlighted or underlined or something that where the change is, and I didn't see any, so I didn't know if we completely redid this or what had happened.
It is very, very similar.
Okay. And it's okay with the BVEA? You guys had no problems? What? Yes, it's okay, or yes, you had problems? Okay.
Sarah Gunn, she's here tonight. She served on the committee. Tracy Mercier served on the committee.
Yeah. Where's Sarah? I can't. Oh, the mask. Okay. Thank you.
Excuse me, I'm the new guy on this board.
Yes, sir.
And I'm looking at the 85-page document. Is that more of a reference material? Okay.
Yes, so what I did, one of two things will happen, or two things will happen.
Get the superintendent's evaluation.
One of the things is in the table of comments, I highlighted in red the documents that we actually use to do the evaluation. The other thing that I will not do, but I'll ask someone who has the know-how to do this. If you look at our evaluation, the current evaluation document on the website, we have those particular forms, and they have been pulled out of the evaluation document. And so teachers or administrators, they can go right to that observation tool and use it. So, I mean, there is a lot of stuff in there. So,
yeah, you'd spend all year evaluating and nobody teaching.
Sure.
Well, I didn't get too
Since this is an action item, let me go ahead and make a motion that we put this on the floor. That's okay? Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the teacher evaluation document.
Second.
Now, my question.
Discussion.
Now, my questions. You said principals had a few questions and probably teachers had some questions. What kind of concerns were they?
the principals made a couple of recommendations, and they were small things. I can't even remember specifically. We made the changes. And then took them back to the committee. I cannot remember specifically. There were a few people, some on the committee, who had some suggestions, and we took those on as well.
Okay. Ms. Jones?
So
go ahead.
Does this make it easier on principals for evaluating teachers than the other one?
Does it make it easier? Probably not, because it's not that different. So probably not. It's probably similar.
It's an honest
Very
question,
similar.
an honest answer.
It just basically just changes the weighting of the.
I mean, that was the main reason that the evaluation document came out in the first place, and it. I have understood that there may be even more changes coming, so we may be bringing something back on down the road. I don't know. We'll see.
I was going to say, I can sit up here and say yes all night long, but I'm not the one that's evaluating the teachers or being evaluated. So I want to make sure that it's fair to everybody involved.
Sure.
Well, I'm trusting you understand it, and the BVEA understands it.
It's not very different.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very, very similar to what we're currently using, and it's more favorable to teachers. I believe for the weighting alone, it is much more favorable to teachers.
Okay.
I think at this time too, with academic progress weighted as a 4, with the times we're in, that'd be 35% are virtual, and a lot of those aren't doing the work. I mean, you get a bad evaluation, that's not your fault.
Sure. And we have already taken that into account this year anyway. We realize that this is such an unusual year.
Thank you, Mr. Ritchie. Ms. Jones?
Yes.
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 Your page, and you'll see item 5I is now on your agenda.
I will have to refresh.
Got it.
I will let you know our partnership with community schools is also vital to providing the wraparound services that we provide to our students, and especially now during COVID, they're part of that school-to-home connection. This is also coming out of federal funds, not CARES Act funding, but our normal title funds, and is part of the way that we sustain the Communities and Schools program in our division.
Thank you. Approval of contract purchase greater than $50,000, Communities in Schools. Need me to read this? Oh.
Okay. No, I didn't see it.
We do need a motion.
Make a motion to approve contract purchase greater than $50,000 for Communities in Schools.
Second.
Discussion?
What is this, a computer program or what?
These are people that actually serve in each of our. So this is not a virtual. This is a real life program that we have. It's a partnership with state agencies. They're in a few divisions across the state, and they just try to get the community engaged in the school process, and in turn they reach out and serve as advocates between school and home. So each school has a coordinator who works with our families, especially those families that have exceptional challenges, and try to bridge the gap between school and home.
They're really a great group. I really like.
So how many people are involved in this?
There are, I'm going to say 6 to 8 because I'm not. They have 2 people that work. We actually have an office for them downstairs, and then we have, depending on how you look at full-time and part-time people. So 8 people total, but I don't know the FTE for those 8 folks.
FTE?
Full-time, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, there we go again.
And then one of their biggest focuses is to focus on individuals to help them get through the process to graduation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Starting at the elementary school and making those connections that families may need, whether it is connections to housing, connections to food, connections to resources for they need educationally, getting students on college trips. They serve in a wide array of capacities, really based on student need.
They really do. I think it's one of our best programs. I remember we started out with just one person, and now we have all of this, and we have office space for them, and the jobs I've seen them do with the shoes, the hoodies, all these other things that they're doing with the community, I think it's fantastic.
I agree with Mr. White. I was one of the delegation, part of the delegation that went to Richmond to observe that in motion before we were able to get it here in Bristol. And since it's been here, I mean, it's been nothing but hands down a great thing, not only for our school system, but also for the community. So money well spent.
I think the state pretty much looks at us as one of the better models of how this works.
Okay, Ms. Jones?
Mr. Alvis?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Goodpaster?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mr. Fletcher?
Yes. Okay, next to discussion items. First item is discussion of employee shortages.
Mr. Chairman, I'll just call to your attention, you may have saw some social media posts and some news stories about some shortages we're having in the division. Currently, we started the year with three bus drivers, so we're in search of 3 bus drivers. Anytime we have somebody sick, obviously, we don't have a substitute driver to replace those routes. We also substitute teachers. It's not came to be a problem yet, but as we go into flu season, I'm really concerned about it. Johnson County, who is having some in-person learning, has had to close school, and it's not because of COVID in their students, it's because of staffing issues, and they've not been able to staff in-person learning. We also were down 10 cafeteria workers and aides as well. We're having a hard time hiring. Part of what we're doing, we've started a social media campaign. I've shared with you the videos that we've put out, recruiting videos, and then we're going to have a job fair this Wednesday at Virginia High School from 4 to 7, and we're working with the Sheriff's Office to go ahead and do fingerprints that evening, and we'll be ready to offer jobs at that point. But that's a short-term fix. You'll see there's one document there that shows how non-competitive we are with how we pay our bus drivers as compared to some other localities. The budget that you initially approved this past year was going to take care of some of that because we had really focused on support staff with 50 cents on the hour starting off, and then the 2% raise, then the step. Unfortunately, when COVID hit, that budget, we had to go back to the drawing board, and personnel was the first hit that we obviously took. But we're going to have to really think hard as we go into this next budget year, and maybe even sooner than that, about adjusting how we pay some of our hourly employees. And just wanted to bring that to your attention, and also to the attention of the public. If you're looking for work, we've got something for you. Come join our team. We'd love to have you.
We have the cafeteria salaries.
We do. We're going to provide all those to you. I just wanted to see, as you can see, when you look at some divisions that are paying up to $24 an hour for bus drivers, and we're topping out much less than that. Bus driver shortages are nationwide, but we're not helping ourselves with the way that we pay our bus drivers. Obviously, I think you're dedicated to that, but I just wanted to draw your attention to it. You know, we'll try to deal with it in the budget for next year, but if we continue to have this shortage, we may have to look at it even sooner than that.
So, looking at that, the other divisions, they have step increases for their bus drivers.
Yes,
years of service, I guess.
Right. That's a conversation that we've had over the last couple of weeks. Do we need to relook at how we do our tiers for bus drivers and go to a salary scale like that? Whether we do or not, you can see the almost $25 an hour at step 15 in one division, and you top out at $15.05 here in Bristol. So to be competitive, we're going to have to work on that scale, regardless if it's steps or adjusting our tiers.
How many hours a day does a bus driver?
We have different options depending on what tier you are. You can either work 4 hours a day, which is a part-time, or you can work 7.5 hours a day, and then that 7.5 hours you can work. We even have some summer opportunities if you're working the 7.5 hours a day.
What would you be doing 7.5 hours? You're not driving a bus.
Oh yeah, we're running buses. Mr. Buckles will tell you we're running buses all day long for our alternative programs or programs that we have in Abingdon or the Minnick School, or there's seldom a time you'll drive through the city of Bristol that you don't pass Old Yeller. I mean, we're keeping the roads
trying
hot.
to learn, Mr. Buckles.
and I'm also homeless students as well. I mean, if you have a student who becomes homeless and they're attending Van Pelt and they move to the Bristol, Tennessee side or to the Stonewall Jackson side, we still provide transportation for those students. It may not be with a bus, it may be in a van, but we're keeping the roads hot all the time.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Perigin. Discussion of virtual learning.
Mr. White had asked this to be on the agenda, and I tried to be proactive and get ahead of him and go ahead and get those positions hired, so we can discuss it if Mr. White likes.
We already had the discussion, so unless you all have something to add to it.
Did you repeat what you said?
No, don't get me started on that one. I could write a book about that one.
All right, that takes us to item 6C, discussion of Amazon future engineers.
Yep, I just wanted to, I introduced that to you earlier. Dr. Huffman is our lead on that. Just wanted to see if the board had any questions or if Dr. Huffman wanted to add anything that I left out from my brief introduction.
I would just like to say we have just started with our impact team. We have an impact team which includes Dr. Perigin, Mr. Ritchie, Mr. Collins, myself, Mr. Stamper from the middle school, Eileen Moss, a teacher at the middle school, and Aaron Hurd, which is a teacher at the high school, along with Buffy Jones. Buffy Jones is also working in another initiative that we're working on, and I think we've mentioned before, the Bearcat Bridge. She is sort of our workplace or work-based learning coordinator, going out into the community and helping with getting businesses involved within our educational process and getting our students into the businesses. So we've also included her on this because we want to make sure that we are getting our students into the computer science jobs that are available. We have just started, as Dr. Perigin showed you earlier, in phase 1. This is a 3-stage. It's set up now to be a 3-stage process. Originally, they hoped to have 3 stages to be completed within 2 to 3 years. They know with the COVID, and I say they, meaning Amazon and also Code Virginia, that it may take a little longer. Stage 1 was supposed to take just a year, but it may take a year, year and a half for us to get everything implemented. Within stage 1, we have 5 phases. Last week, we completed phase 1, which was identifying our team, identifying our visions and our values, which Dr. Perigin gave you our 3 values and visions for to guide us through this process. The second phase in stage 1 is measuring where we are. And from our last meeting, well, matter of fact, our first meeting, we already started stating things that we needed to measure. So we are ready to get rolling as far as the phases that Amazon and Code Virginia would like for us to do in this. We're already looking at measuring what classes we're offering, the teachers we have. Some other things that we probably will need to measure are our alignment with our dual enrollment opportunities through our community colleges, the 4-year colleges. Look at also our industry certifications that we offer. Do they match up with what the industry needs are in the area? What are the industry needs? What type of computer service jobs? Computer science jobs. There's so many different computer science jobs. There's computer science engineers, there's application developers, there's cybersecurity, so we need to look at what the needs are too, and that's one reason workforce development was one of our main parts of our visions. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to attempt to answer them since we're just getting started, but I can give you an idea of where we're going from there.
Let me just, before you ask a question, add one little caveat with what, kind of starting with the end in mind. As we've mentioned, workforce development, we want to try to attract those jobs to our area, but we also want to take care of our kids and make sure that they're prepared to thrive, as our vision says. One of the opportunities that will come out of this partnership is for minority students who are interested and apply. There are going to be $40,000 scholarships available to our low-income and our black and brown students to attend college, and part of that scholarship will also include internships with Amazon. So it really opens up some amazing possibilities for some of our students with the most needs.
So you're putting these students on track to go to college?
No, we're putting them on track to be employed, whether that means through an industry certification at the high school so they can go ahead and be employed in the computer science field, or to college to get a different computer science, because all computer science fields may not require 4 years, but they do require high school diploma with some type of industry certification or an education geared toward that. Also part of our vision was to also incorporate, like Dr. Perigin said, the 5 C's. So through this, too, they'll be gaining creative thinking, critical thinking, collaboration, and also, I forgot one of the C's. Communication, yes, and that's something that we can take even down into the elementary schools, into the middle schools, and even through the high schools. So this is something that can go across the whole gamut and not just within one area, but this is something we want to continue focusing on. So they can also go straight into a workforce if needed, or they can go on to a 4-year college if that's their desire once they see what's available.
Have you looked
The term engineer kind of threw me off. Of course, in computer technology, everybody's an engineer one way or another.
Exactly.
It's pretty loosely used.
And once you say computer science, people think it's just like using this, but there's so many other vices that can come out of computer science. Again, the collaboration, the creative thinking, and you could be anything from an app developer all the way up to a computer science engineer.
Have you got to a point that you've realized what population you're targeting? Like, class, freshmen, sophomores, junior. I know you'll be with seniors, but where are you going to start?
The focus right now is middle school, to start with middle school, but my vision is that you take it on even into elementary school and start early. We need to introduce them to the jobs that are available, what they need to take, make sure that's where our measuring and alignment comes in, make sure that our courses are aligned to what they want to do and what is needed. So I think we can even eventually take it on into the elementary schools. But also being CTE coordinator, that is also my goal too, is to get that down into that area. So you're going to get me both ways here on computer science and CTE.
So this being a CTE program, equipping classrooms come through Perkins money then?
It can, depending, of course, we follow the Perkins, but yes, we can. And to be truthful, I have a lot of our classrooms equipped and ready to go. We just also need to make sure we have it aligned with the teachers, the staffing, the students. So we're going to have to market what's available and what's out there to the students so they know.
Right.
So that's going to be one of our goals too, and one of our focuses.
As a CTE fan, I'm excited. Let's get the ball rolling.
But we're trying to make sure I stay busy.
So is Amazon actually helping with the positions that are needed or that are going to be in demand, and what the
That's a good question, and I'm going to be truthful with you. Just as just starting to look over this just over the past couple of weeks, my understanding is that they initiated this program along with Code Virginia. Code Virginia or Code VA is a nonprofit organization closer to Richmond, if I remember correctly, and they are partnering because Amazon's coming into Northern Virginia, but Code VA is stating that, and feels like Southwest Virginia can help with that workforce. And as we all know, they can still stay locally with the way we're all with virtual work now. So they can still work for Amazon, but they can stay locally, but we've got to have the workforce ready and show them that we have the people here. And that's what the whole goal is to make sure that our students are workforce ready for the computer science. And that's why we want to be a computer science ready school.
And if you'll remember, when Amazon first made the announcement, they did a tour and they came down through Southwest Virginia. Our city manager was part of that process and wanted to know how we could attract some of those jobs down to this part of the woods. And this was one of the recommendations they made to the city manager, who then suggested that we apply for this as well. So it's not just that we're up here grabbing fruit off of a random tree. This is as part of the Amazon discussions that were in this area, this was one of the recommendations that was made to prepare our students for that workforce.
It'd be nice if Amazon could help identify the positions, maybe what the salary ranges are.
And I eventually think that they will, but I also think because we're going to be a computer science ready school, that we also need to identify what we have need for now and start drawing our students into that force, but also letting Amazon know that we have them ready so that they will start pulling our students too. So I think it can help in different aspects.
Sure.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Huffman. Discussion of virtual snow days.
Oh, listen, we try to be proactive here in the city. As you know, we are providing virtual instruction to the entire division on, the decisions we've made about COVID-19 and the impact on our school has a domino effect. Because of we have had to shorten the school day to make sure that we have supervision during the school day. And so in the past, that we've been able to bank hours that if we miss a snow day, that we may not, we have to miss 5 before we start making up those days. This year, we're going to be right on the verge of getting the required number of hours and days in. And so if we have a snow day, we're already going into June. If we have a snow day, we're going to have to make that rascal up. And so I would like for the board, if we know that a snowstorm is coming, and we can say, okay, it's Thursday, they're calling for 4 inches, 8 inches of snow over the, coming Sunday night. We could go ahead and schedule a virtual snow day. We could have students take their iPads or their laptops home. Teachers could take theirs home as well. The lesson would be ready to rock and roll. The cafeteria staff could go ahead and get the additional meals sent home with families on that Thursday, and we could continue, even with 8 inches of snow on the ground, we could continue with school just in a different format. Now, if we have an ice storm that blows in overnight and we have to make that decision at 6 o'clock in the morning, we can't do a virtual snow day that way. But if we plan ahead and get all of our ducks in a row, I think it's something that we could pull off. It's going to take a lot of planning. As you know, everything that we've done in COVID has taken a lot of planning. If the board just thinks that's the dumbest idea they've ever heard, I won't waste our staff's time with trying to go through that planning process. But if the board is at least interested in investigating, I will turn everybody loose on that, and we should have guidance. We're expecting guidance from what the state will accept as a virtual snow day in the next week or two. But I didn't want to wait till our November meeting to start talking about that, because we, as you know, we can get snow in late October and early November as well. So it's something we need to begin work on now. I won't do that unless the board allows us to at least start investigating it.
Discussion?
Question. And I may be just somewhere out there too, but our teachers, I think they have maybe lesson plans for a week, 2 weeks. why would an ice storm affect that if the teachers already have their lesson plan ready and they're ready to go anyway the next day?
Part of that issue would be that students, our elementary students, may not be taking their iPads home. They're, getting iPads home and back to school is an issue, so they may not have the technology with them at home they would need to log on. And then also meals, delivering meals to students in an ice storm could be an issue. And if we have school, we also have to provide meals.
That's a given. If we have schools, we have to provide meals. That's a given.
That's one of the big reasons that a last-minute decision, as we started talking about this in our leadership team, you can imagine Miss Hicks, and she was ready to, she already had it all planned out and mapped out, but needed the advance notice. And as a matter of fact, I don't remember the time that she gave us, but she said, if you're going to make that call before we send meals home on Thursday, I need to know 9:23, or something like that I need to know by that in order for us to get those meals prepared and sent home with students.
Just a thought.
Yeah, I agree.
It's on my mind, so I just threw it out there. But thank you.
So, we know how predictions go around here for snowstorms. So we send the meals home. That's the Monday meal. So we're federally funded through that. So if we don't go to, if we come to school, or if we plan to be virtual, we're going to go virtual.
There could be a lot of egg on the superintendent's face if he makes that call, and we have one of those warm fronts come through and there's no snow. But yeah, once you make the call to go virtual, you're virtual. There'd be, oh no, the snow, I'm going back in. Once we make that call, it would have to stick, whether the snow did or not. There's a lot of impact, hourly employees, whether they come in and work or not. So if we're going to do it, it's not just something, it really will take planning. We've started the discussion, and we're ready to move forward. I don't hear the board saying, no, Keith, that's a crazy idea. So unless I hear that, we're going to go ahead and start preparing and be ready to have something presented at our next board meeting.
I just want to hear more about it because I think it's fascinating. I hadn't even thought about it, but yeah, we need to be ready for it.
I think it's worth exploring.
I thought about it when we was even thinking about going virtual, because I think I made a comment one day that said that we don't have to even have snow days anymore. We'll just hook that computer up and we'll just go from there. But there are a lot of nuts and bolts that has to be looked at with this. So, but we should explore it anyway.
The point is, you can't have virtual food.
Yeah. I'd say it's worth looking at. Sure enough, we'll get a blizzard this year.
Yeah, we're due for some this year. Had one for a while.
Okay. Mr. White, would you read us into closed session?
Certainly will. Pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia, I move that the board convene a closed meeting for the purpose of discussing the following matters. The discussion of personnel is authorized by Section 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia, specifically the discussion of certain personnel recommendations for employment and resignations.
Second.
Ms. Jones?
Mr. Albus?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Goodpaster?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight.